Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Natalia Lee and I'm an author and freelance editor. And today I am going to be answering some questions that my Instagram followers sent me regarding editing. I have some chamomile lavender tea here in my little ragdoll mug, and we're just going to have a lovely relaxing time talking about freelance editing. All right, so the first question is, what is the difference between edits that you can do yourself and edits that need a professional? So I think at the most basic is that you can do edits yourself, but it's a question of, do you have the skills to see what needs to be changed? Do you have the skills to recognize the mistakes that you're making? Do you have the skills to make sure that you're telling the best story that you can? So while you can certainly do all of your own edits, I do know that a professional is going to be much more tailored to catching the things that you're not going to catch yourself. So again, you can make these edits on your own, totally, but I think you need to be realistic about where your skill levels are and whether or not a professional could help bring your book to the next level for your readers. Can you go over the different types and stages of edits? So I would say developmental edit, copy edit, and then proofread at the very end. Unless you also want to hire a formatter, then it would be developmental edit, copy edit, formatting, and then proofreading. But a formatter isn't really an editor. But those would be the different stages of edits. And then I'll try to make this super brief. A developmental editor is looking at your actual story and the content of your story, and their job is to help you write the best story that you can. Copy editor is going to be the one that cleans everything up and makes sure that you don't have typos on every single page, because we've all read an indie published book that has a typo on every single page, and you do not want to be that author. And then the proofread is the very last stage, and a lot of people get proofreading and copy editing mixed up, but they are not the same thing. A copy editor is the really serious, like down and dirty, gritty edit that's going to clean everything up for you. Whereas the proofread comes after the formatting. A proofreader should have a physical copy of your book in most cases, because they're going to be looking, of course, for any grammatical, spelling, and punctuation errors, but they're also going to be looking for proper formatting, page numbers, proper headers. Do you have everything you need on your copyright page? Like, they're going to be looking for the top notch little tiny things that need to be proofed before your book is published. So the proofreader is the very last thing, and they need to look over it after it has been formatted and preferably laid out for print as well. How do you find an editor? So there are many different ways to find an editor. My go-to, what I have done is used the EFA, which is the Editorial Freelancers Association, and you could certainly post on their job listing. You can post a job and then editors can apply for it. Or what I did when I was hiring an editor was I used their advanced search function, and I searched for editors who worked with young adult fantasy fiction. I needed a copy editor, so I put that in as well. And then it came up with an entire list of editors who did exactly that. And then I just went through that list. I picked out a few I liked, and then I contacted those editors. I asked for sample edits. I wanted to learn more about their editing. I talked to one editor on the phone, and she was actually the one that I ended up hiring. So my tip, my go-to would be to use the Editorial Freelancers Association. You can go through their member directory for free. You don't have to be a member. Ouch. You don't have to be a member. You don't have to pay anything. You can use the advanced search function and then find, 5, 10 editors that you're interested in, and then get in contact with them and see which one you like best. And make sure to get a sample edit too, so that you know that they can do what they say they can do. Next question, how do the costs range according to the type of editing requested in general? So basically what I have seen and what I've experienced is that developmental editing is going to be the most expensive, copy editing is going to be slightly less expensive, and then proofreading is slightly less expensive than the copy editing. So it's like developmental, copy editing, and then proofreading. But of course, this is going to vary from editor to editor. There is generally like a price range that editors should adhere to, just to make sure that they are not underpricing or overpricing themselves, but I definitely have seen that developmental editing is the most expensive while proofreading is the cheapest. But remember, you need to do a copy edit. Whether you do it yourself or you hire somebody, you need to do your copy edit before you're hiring a proofreader. Okay, next question is average pricing. So for this, I'm actually going to go ahead and take you over to the Editorial Freelancers Association, and I'm going to show you what they consider average pricing right now within our market. Okay, friends, here we are on the EFA's website. I'm going to go right up here to Resources and go down to Editorial Rates. This is going to kind of give us a basic look at the range of fees that you're going to be looking at depending on what you need. So if you're looking here between basic copy editing and heavy copy editing, you're going to see that there's a price range here, which I will kind of talk about later. You have your developmental editing, which is definitely going to be more expensive than your basic copy editing here. And something to take into consideration is that these are hourly fees. But if you are somebody who is, especially starting out as an editor, you're not going to necessarily know how many pages you can edit per hour. And this is also going to change based on the author that you're working with. So if you're doing heavy copy editing for somebody who needs a lot of help and you can only edit 2 to 5 manuscript pages an hour, we're looking at an hourly rate of $40 to $50 versus cleaner work. You can edit 5 to 10 manuscript pages an hour for $30 to $40 an hour. So this is kind of a basic look, and you can always, just hop on the EFA.org, come over here to look at these rates. But keep in mind that many editors will edit per word, something like this, rather than per hour. And of course, it's not going to be anywhere near expensive as like a ghostwriting price. This is just kind of a basic look at the range of fees for different types of editing work. So I highly recommend that you bookmark this. The next question, what type of editing do you find to be most helpful? I have never hired a developmental editor, though I am interested in hiring one, not for my Pistol Daisy series because I'm already on book 2 of that, but I would be interested in potentially hiring a copy editor for books in the future. Personally, what I have found most helpful is a copy editor. I have used a copy editor, and the copy edit took my work to the next level. Especially if you are self-publishing, and I have a feeling that most of you guys that are asking these questions want to self-publish. You don't want to have errors on every single page. That will make a reader close your book if they get frustrated enough. So copy editing makes your book look and feel way more professional to readers. And also, I feel like as self-publishing and indie publishing is growing and becoming more and more popular, you don't want to be the person that's stuck in the past putting out books that are riddled with errors. So I would say personally, copy editing has been most beneficial to me because that's the type of editor I've used. And I also think that's the type of edit that is most obvious to people who are reading your story. Next question, which type of edit is the hardest to find a good editor for? I think all of the above. Because a developmental editor, that's a serious job. That is a very serious job. You need an editor who understands story structure, an editor who understands how to tell a good story. So that's pretty serious. And then also, for a copy editor, you need somebody who knows exactly what to look for. Somebody that knows how to punctuate, how to spell, how to use the Chicago Manual of Style. If you're hiring an editor who doesn't even know what the Chicago Manual of Style is, then they're not the right editor for you. So I would say that no matter which type of editor you're looking to hire, they're all going to be, it's going to be not hard to find an editor, but you need to approach it very seriously and very carefully to make sure that you are not getting ripped off. Okay, great question. What are important qualifications to look for when hiring an editor? So, qualifications are tough because it's very easy to fake it in this industry. I would definitely look for somebody who has a portfolio, and if you see their portfolio of books, you could either go and look at a chapter sample. Like for example, if you're trying to hire a copy editor and you see a list of books that they've worked on, Go look at those books on Amazon, read the reviews. What are people saying? Are they complaining about typos? Are they saying that the book was incredibly clean? Read a sample chapter if you can, maybe even buy the book. Same thing with developmental editor. Developmental editor, especially if they have a portfolio of books, go look at the reviews for those books. Like if the book is getting 1-star reviews across the board, that developmental editor might not be for you. But if that book's getting pretty good reviews, a range of reviews, then that editor might be somebody that you want to look into. But then also just in terms of qualifications, I think experience is a big one, because I can say I have a degree in English with a concentration in creative writing, which I do. I'm a member of the Editorial Freelancers Association. I've taken all these classes, but you need proof. So look at the portfolio, ask for a sample edit, read the reviews of the books that these editors have worked on. Yeah, and I think that's a really good start. And also, the authors who have hired these editors, again, look at the portfolio. Maybe reach out to some of those authors and ask them what their experience was like with their editor, if they had a positive experience, a negative experience. I think that's a better way to determine if an editor will work for you than qualifications, because again, it's difficult to know what qualifications to look for in this type of industry. Next question, what are some red flags I should look out for when it comes to an editor? This is a really good question. Red flags. Read their website very carefully. If their website is riddled with errors, that is a red flag right there. I'm not going to say which website I was looking at today, but I was looking at a website today for an indie publishing house that offers editing, very expensive editing, mind you, very expensive editing to indie authors, and their website was full of errors. So immediately, I knew that this was a red flag. If you are offering incredibly expensive editing services, your website should not be riddled with errors. So that's one red flag. Another red flag would be no testimonials, or if you ask that editor to provide you with references or other authors they've worked with, they can't provide you with any. If they won't provide a free sample edit. And I know that some editors require a payment for a sample edit, but I offer sample edits for free. I think it's pretty common practice to offer sample edits for free, so an editor should always be willing to give you a sample. What are some other red flags? No portfolio. If an editor is trying to charge you for services and they've never done it before, close that website down and go find somebody that can actually do what they say that they can do. And read the website carefully. I cannot stress that enough. If there are errors on an editor's website, that is a huge problem. Next question. If you're self-pub and you don't have a full editor, what edit is more important, copy or line? I would definitely say copy editing. That's just my preference, because I really believe that copy editing is going to make your work look incredibly clean, and it's going to take it to that next level that readers are going to be expecting from you. In your opinion, what do you think people should be expecting to pay for an editor? So we already briefly went through that editorial rates page on the EFA, but different editors are going to charge different amounts of money, especially based on how much experience they have. So if you have less money to spend, you could certainly look for an editor who is newer to the business. So they should be charging less. An editor who only has 2 books in their portfolio should not be charging the same amount as an editor who has 100 books in their portfolio. So there should be a range of cost there that you'll be looking at. But again, if you have less money, you could certainly look for somebody who is new to the business. That doesn't mean that they're going to be bad. New editors need a chance as well. Hang on, my throat is getting dry. But if you're hiring an editor that's a bit newer to the game, haven't been around the block that many times, just focus on, getting a sample edit, making sure their website is clean and professional and free of errors. Just look out for those red flags that we talked about. But there is, of course, going to be a range that different editors are going to charge. Next question, does an editor also look at the story content as well as the writing itself? Depends on the editor that you hire. A developmental editor is going to be focusing on the story, while a copy editor is going to be focusing on the copy, the punctuation, the spelling, the grammar, but then there are some editors like myself who will also make comments and commentary about the story. So personally, if I'm doing a copy edit, I will also be leaving commentary inline. I leave inline comments. So if I'm catching things that don't make sense, I will tell my clients, because even though I'm just their copy editor, I feel that it's my job to let them know if their story is a mess and doesn't make any sense to me. So I will always leave those types of comments, but not all editors do this. So if you want an editor who's going to focus on your story, you need a developmental editor and beta readers. Next question, what can an editor do that beta readers can't? Again, depends on the type of editor that you're hiring. Beta readers are an amazing option to use in lieu of a developmental editor, especially if the price for a developmental editor isn't really in the cards for you. I totally understand that, because they can be incredibly expensive for good reason, because they're helpful. Of course, there is a reason for developmental editors, but beta readers are going to be looking at the content of your story. Some of them will certainly be catching errors, but I have had beta readers in the past who tried to do copy editing for me, and they were actually incorrect in what they were telling me. So just because a beta reader tells you, hey, you need to punctuate this in this way, or you need to spell this in this way, does not mean that you can trust them. If I had listened to all my beta readers in the past, I would have had a mess of a novel for my copy editor, because those beta readers were not copy editors themselves, and they didn't know what they were doing necessarily in terms of copy editing. So beta readers should absolutely be utilized, whether or not you're hiring a developmental editor. But then in terms of making sure your words are spelled properly, making sure your style is consistent, that would be more a copy editor's job. And you could certainly try to enlist other writers to help you and readers to help you, but just keep in mind, if you're not hiring a professional, you'll need to double check and fact check everything that your proofreaders or beta readers are telling you to make sure that they know what they're talking about. Because in my experience, my beta readers tried really hard to help me, but they actually were harming more than helping in terms of a copy edit. When do you know that you're ready to hire an editor, and how far in advance should you book? So when do you know that you're ready to hire an editor? I would say write your book, edit it at least 1 or 2 times, have beta readers, edit with beta reader feedback, and then you're at a pretty good spot to decide if you want to hire a developmental editor or not. So once you're done with incorporating beta reader feedback, if you want to hire a developmental editor, I'd say that's the time to do it. If not, you could do another round of beta readers, totally different beta readers. And of course, you could do another round of beta readers, whether you're going to hire a developmental editor or not. So that would come first. And then after multiple rounds of betas or developmental editor, multiple rounds of self-edits, once you are absolutely certain of where your novel is and what your story is, that's when it comes time to hire a copy editor. You do not want to hire a copy editor and then hire a developmental editor, because you're going to end up rewriting so many things that the copy edit is going to become useless, essentially. So developmental editor would definitely be first, and then your copy editor, and then your formatter, and then your proofreader. And then how far in advance should you book? I book out about 2 months in advance. So that's what I kind of try to put out there to potential clients, is that they should be contacting me usually with 2 months notice. But I have worked with editors who book out 3 to 6 months in advance, depending on how busy they are. So I would say do not expect to contact an editor and then immediately be able to have editing. You need to be looking at least a few months in advance, just to make sure that they have availability for you, and then to also make sure that you have a backup editor in case your preferred editor cannot get you in to their books. Next question, where do people hire their editors from? Again, I'm going to go back to the Editorial Freelancers Association. That's a really good place to hire them. And I've also heard pretty good things about Readsy as well. And again, it doesn't matter where you're hiring them from. You still need to look for red flags. You still need to get that sample edit. You still need to have a contract, because even somebody who appears very professional in a professional atmosphere like the EFA or Readsy, they can still be a little bit untrustworthy sometimes. So just keep that in mind. Questions to ask a potential editor. That is a really great question. And I think this is going to change depending on who you are and what you're writing. So when I hired an editor for Song of the Dryad, I asked questions about fantasy. Do you have experience with fantasy? Do you have experience with world building, creating a fantasy world? Do you have experience with magic systems? Can I trust you to make sure that my magic system makes sense? So those were some of the questions that I asked my editor because I was working within a fantasy world. So it's going to depend on what you're writing, but again, at the most basic, ask them for a sample edit. That's where you should always start. I would also ask them if they have a contract, because if you are hiring an editor that does not have a contract with you, you can get into some hot water. I always have contracts with my editing clients to protect them and so that I am protected as well. So that would be a good question to ask. You could ask for references, or if they have a public portfolio, just go and you could contact those authors yourself. So that's kind of like some basic questions that you could ask your editor, but of course it's going to depend on what you're writing and what type of edit you need. Next question, do you edit before sending to an editor? Like read through your draft first or just send it out? Absolutely edit it first, because the cleaner it is, the more helpful your editor is going to be. So let's say you're hiring a developmental editor. If you send them a rough draft, they're going to have a much more difficult time helping to guide you to a story that makes sense and has entertainment value. So if you have gone through a couple drafts and you're on, let's say, the third or fourth draft, by the time you send that to your developmental editor, they're going to have a much easier time of helping guide you in a good direction in terms of further edits. And then also when it comes to copy editing, if your draft is an absolute complete mess, you might end up paying higher prices than you would if you had incredibly clean work. I do sometimes offer discounts for people with super clean work for copy editing. So if you've already put in the legwork and you've done a lot of, and you've done your rounds of edits and that book is as clean as you can get it, you might end up getting discounts from the editor that you hire. So definitely edit multiple times before sending to any type of editor. Next question, is an editor the same as a beta reader? Their jobs seem to overlap a lot. No, they're not the same. A beta reader can certainly be helpful and everybody should be utilizing beta readers, but a beta reader is not a professional editor. And like I said, I had beta readers who were telling me to do things that were completely incorrect and would have made my editor's job much more difficult. So do not confuse a beta reader who reads for entertainment and just to help you because they're a nice person with a professional editor who has studied the craft and has been doing this for a while. And again, if you don't have the money to hire editors, which I 100% understand, they are super expensive in some cases, beta readers are a really good way to go, but they are not the same. And a beta reader is not a professional editor and should not be confused for a professional editor. All right, so there's quite a few questions left, but a lot of them overlap with other things I've said, so I'm going to touch on these very briefly. Could you do a breakdown of the different types of edits and what to expect with each? So I think I want to make an entire video about breaking down edits. Some like line editing, copy editing, and proofreading, those can kind of get blurry for some people and that can be a little bit confusing to people. So I think I'd like to do an entire video on breaking down different types of edits because it could probably take me another 20 minutes just to do that. So let me know, you guys, if you're interested in more of a breakdown of exactly what these different editors do. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in that. What can a writer do to polish their work before sending it to an editor? Multiple rounds of self-edits, at least one round of beta readers, if not more. Just doing the absolute best you can, because remember, some editors will offer discounts for super clean work. So be aware of that. When is the best time to start looking for an editor? This depends on what type of editor you want to hire, but I would say start looking about 3 months before you think you'll be ready to work with them. And some people, like me, I now require a 50% non-refundable deposit at time of booking. So be aware that some editors do require a deposit because they want to make sure that if they get you on their calendar, that they're going to have work that month. They don't want to get up to that month and suddenly you cancel on them and they can't get anybody else in that spot. So be aware that some editors will require a deposit at time of booking. And then the last question is just, what is the process of getting one? I kind of went over that here. I also have another video all about how to hire an editor, and I will link that up here in the cards up above if you want to check that out. Okay friends, so I ended up having way more questions than I originally anticipated, and the video got quite long. So I'm actually going to wrap this up here. This is going to be the freelance editor Q&A part 1, and then I will have the freelance editor Q&A part 2 up very soon. Probably, I don't know, tomorrow, a couple days after that. Hi Tifa. Tifa just ate, so he's happy. Yep, hang on. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this editor Q&A part 1. And I will have the second part to this up very, very soon. I just thought it would be a little bit more friendly in 2 chunks instead of one single 45-minute video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!